G'day folks, Andy here from McDowall Manor. Today we're doing our second cheese making video, so this one's going to be a lot briefer than the first, which was an instructional. This one's just to show you a quick recipe of what I call Glasshouse Blue. So we've got 6 litres of unhomogenized milk and we've brought that to 30 degrees. A bit cooler than most cheeses, you usually take them to about 37. So what we're looking at now is I've added a smidgen of penicillium roqueforti and a drop of standard mesophillic starters. I'll let that rehydrate for a few minutes and then I'll mix it in. Okay, so we're going to add a 1/4 cup of water with 2 mils of calcium chloride. We'll add that in there, just distribute that. We'll give that a stir. And I'll give that a couple of minutes and then we'll add the rennet. Now I realise I've been talking in a bit of secret code, which is a result of the particular brand of cheese making stuff that I use. So the amount of rennet we're going to use, oh that's upside down, I don't know if you'll be able to read it anyway, is 1/8 of a teaspoon, which in this case happens to be called a dash. So I'll just throw 1/8 of a teaspoon of rennet straight into the top of that milk. See if I can put the camera down and do it that way. Never like doing this folks because I don't know what you can see and what you can't see. Alright, so we've got the dash there. Undo the rennet. We'll try not to spill just too much of this, but you never know. There you go, not too bad. And we'll just try and distribute that equally across the surface. Then we'll do that same up and down motion on the stir. Hopefully I haven't missed this too badly and you can see something. It's not exactly the sort of thing I can do again. So after 1.5 hours we've cut the curd and it says to stir it for 10 minutes. So I'm actually taking the opportunity to rewarm it slightly and giving it a gentle stir. You can see the curd pieces are mostly fairly large. So that's been stirred for about 10 minutes now. I'm going to let it sit for a bit so that the curd sinks to the bottom, that way we can ladle off most of the way. Alright, I'm not going to bore you with too much of this, just wanted to, what we're going to do is just tip that ladle, get rid of most of this whey. So you can see that creamy buttery stuff floating on top, beautiful. Okay, so there's Rosie talking to Anthony in the background there. I'll keep going till most of this is gone and then I'll give you a look. So you can see most of that whey's well and truly gone now. The curd there, a little bit but not much. We're going to ladle, oh look at that, hey? Look at that, oh, said curd into a colander that's lined with cheesecloth. It's a damp cheesecloth and you can see the whey draining out the bottom down the sink. I'm obviously not keeping the whey this time. Made feta about 2 days ago, so I don't need any more whey. I'm not going to bore you with the whole lot of this again, but I'll come back when we've ladled all that curd out. So you can see I actually got a heck of a lot of curd out of that 6 litres of milk. That's a whole colander. And I was getting really nervous that that wasn't going to fit. And so I'm going to leave that to drain for 5 or 10 minutes now. And then we'll come back and transfer it to a mould. What we're looking at doing now is we'll ladle that curd out of the colander and into these moulds that have been lined with a little bit of cheesecloth as well. That's just to help me flip them. They're actually, believe it or not, a cheap Charlie beetroot strainer. It came with a bonus strainer, and you clip the lid shut. Works a treat for cheese, I've got to say. These were the 3 big ones. I've got 3 little ones as well, similar ones. I'm hoping I don't need to use them, but it could be pretty close, folks. So I'll start the ladle process and give you a look at that part way through. So that's those 3 strainers done. We're going to drop them into their beetroot container, and I'll keep a fairly close eye on them, obviously, because there's not a lot of room between the container and the strainer. It's just such a cheap way to get, you know, reasonably good cheese molds. So what I'm going to do is they are supposed to drain for 12 hours in total, and you flip them about every 3 hours, so about 4 times in 12 hours. Now that's not going to work terribly successfully for me today because it's 8:30 at night, but I'll come up with some harebrained scheme and we'll see it through. Okay, so we're on pretty much one of the final steps now. It's the next morning. We're going to pull these cheeses out. We'll unwrap the little babies. And you can see why I call these, originally called them Brisbane Craggy Blues, because they are quite craggy. That's a result of my poor ability to wrap a cloth properly. I'll just get these unwrapped and then I'll show you how we salt them. So I've gone from Brisbane Craggy Blue to Glasshouse Blue, and the reason I did that was because the only the milk I use is Kahlua milk, so that's a milk from up in our Sunshine Coast, and the obvious set of mountains to pick around there is a set of mountains called the Glasshouse Mountains, so it's Glasshouse Blue. All those crags will certainly blue up. We're going to just sprinkle a bit of cheese salt on that. I'll give that side a bit of a rub. Remember, you're going to have to salt every side. So the obvious thing to do is top and bottoms first. And then we'll just, when I do the rounded sides, I tend just to throw it in my hand and give her a bit of a rub. I don't really think there's, whoa, a bit much. I don't really think there's all that much of a precise art to this, quite frankly. As you could tell by me muttering, whoa, a bit much. Alright, so that's the tops and the bottoms. Bit of a handful. Probably about a teaspoon when I say a bit of a handful. And I'll just rub that. Try and spread it across the sides. Try and get a bit of a nice even spread on that. And that's looking alright. So that's the first one done. We're going to put them in a ripening container now. And they ripen for a month. For the first little while you're going to get them out once a day and give them a dry off. Just to try and keep a lot of the surface moulds down. And usually you age these little fellas for 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, so it's 6 weeks later now. Well, right, I'm only lying. This is one I prepared earlier. That's the blue. You can see, where is it? There's the mould on top and the craggy bit. And hang on, I'll just push that down and you should be able to, there you go, look at that, there's the mould inside. So we're going to poke the cheese with a skewer in a little while. That's what lets that mould in across the centre there that you can see. This is the name of the company who originally developed the Coastal Blue. That's the recipe that I bastardised to make the Glasshouse Blue. So all credit to them. there'd be a copyright trademark holder over that cheese, so don't steal their recipe and reproduce it as your own. I thought I'd just explain the rest of the process for you. That'll let me finish this video up. So what will happen is after 2 days I'm going to use a metal skewer and I'll poke about 4 holes through vertically and another 4 holes right the way through, go all the way through, horizontally. If they look like they close up during the remaining 6 weeks, I'll probably give them a re-stab, but normally it's okay, normally you don't need to. And like I say, you can age that anywhere between 6 weeks to 8 weeks, probably you could even go a bit more if you want. What I do is keep an eye on the surface as well. If it gets just too mouldy, I'll wrap it in aluminium foil, and that tends to retard the surface growth. And I think that's about it. You end up with that beautiful blue that I showed you. I know a lot of people don't eat blue, don't like the look of it, but it really is a fantastic tasting cheese. Love the creamy texture inside. So there you go, folks. That's how you make a Glasshouse Blue. We'll see you next time at McDowall Manor.